Two short communications. Communication number one. Honorable members, I wish to introduce to you a delegation from the County Assembly of Makueni who are seated in the Speaker's Gallery. The delegation comprises 6 members of the County Assembly, led by their Speaker, the Honorable Douglas Mbilu. They are accompanied by 5 members of staff, led by the Deputy Clerk of the County Assembly. The delegation is in the National Assembly to learn on the scheduling of business in the Assembly and other aspects on the conduct of the business of the Assembly. Honorable members, on my own behalf and on that of the National Assembly, I welcome the delegation to Parliament and wish them fruitful deliberations. And as a matter of addition, this afternoon, the House Business Committee welcomed the Speaker and his team into our meeting, and we had good exchanges. The second communication, members, is to invite members who profess the Islamic faith, to an iftar by the Speaker. As you are aware, our brothers and sisters of the Islamic faith are observing the holy month of Ramadan, which commenced last week. The Right Honorable Speaker of the Senate and I hereby extend an invitation to all members of the Islamic faith in both houses of Parliament for an iftar dinner to be held on Thursday, 21st March 2024 at Serena Hotel in Nairobi from 6 p.m. We have also invited the leadership of the House to the dinner. Honorable members, I take this opportunity to wish the Muslim community Ramadan Mubarak. I thank you. Order. Irene Mayaka, you are not invited. Honorable members, allow me to acknowledge in the speakers and public galleries the following schools or institutions: Kenyatta High School, Othaya, Nyeri; Terige Boys School from Mgwen, Nandi; Learning and Discovery Africa, I don't know if that's a school or a college, from Westlands, Nairobi; Chania Girls High School from Thika Town, Kiambu; Kenyatta University, Kasarani, Nairobi. On my behalf and on behalf of the whole House, we welcome them to the House of Parliament. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as I lay these papers, I would also like to take this opportunity to send a message of condolence to students of my alma mater, Kenyatta University, for the loss of their colleagues. And I wish them quick recovery, those that are sick and injured, and those that the Lord took, I wish them, the Lord rest them in eternal peace. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay papers today on the table of the House today, Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. 1, the following statutory instruments with accompanying regulatory impact statements and report on stakeholders' consultations from the Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs. A, legal notice number 49 of 2024 relating to the Fisheries Management and Development Beach Management Unit, Regulations 2024 and the explanatory memorandum. B, legal notice number 50 of 2024 relating to the Fisheries Management and Development Inland Fisheries Regulations 2024 and explanatory memorandum. C, legal notice number 51 of 2024 relating to the Fisheries Management and Development Recreational Fisheries Regulations 2024 and the explanatory memorandum. D, legal notice number 52 of 2024 relating to the Fisheries Management and Development Fish Levy Trust Fund Order 2024 and the explanatory memorandum. E, legal notice number 53 of 2024 relating to the Fisheries Management and Development, Marine Fisheries Regulations 2024 and Explanatory Memorandum. F, Legal Notice number 54 of 2024 relating to the Fisheries Management and Development General Regulations 2024 and Explanatory Memorandum. G, Legal Notice number 55 of 2024 relating to the Fisheries Management and Development Safety and Quality Regulations 2024 and Explanatory Memorandum. And H, Legal Notice number 56 of 2024 relating to the Fisheries Management Development Aquaculture Regulations 2024 and Explanatory Memorandum. 2, Legal Notice number 51 of 2024 relating to the Public Finance Management Kenya Millennium Development Fund Regulations 2024 from the National Treasury. And lastly, Annual Status Reports on Water, Sanitation and Irrigation 2023 from the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Chairperson, Budget and Appropriations Committee. Dendi Nyoro. Any member of the Chair Budget? Who is the Vice Chair? Mary Emase. Are you the Vice Chair Budget? Don't you have a report to table?
Yes.
You have it?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Tuesday, 19th March 2024. The report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on its consideration of the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2024. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
We have none. Next. Member for Githunguri. That's Wamshomba. Didn't I see Honorable Wamchomba in the House? Owen Baya, where is your member?
I thought I also saw Mushomba in the House a few minutes ago. So
I saw her walk in greeting everybody.
I think her paraphernalia is here, but she said she has evaporated.
Okay, let's go to the next. We'll come back to that when she comes.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Honorable Ali Wario, MP Garsen. Give the Honorable Wario the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request for a statement regarding the disappearance of Mr. John Kopesha Abdirova, who is an employee at TARDA. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 44-2C, I wish to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security regarding the disappearance of Mr. John Kopesha Abdirova of ID number 9769707 from Garseni constituency. Honorable Speaker, On Thursday, 8th February 2024, Mr. John Kopesha Abdirova of ID number 9769707 disappeared under mysterious circumstance after he was last seen having dinner in Gamba Tana Resort Guest House at around 10 p.m. The disappearance, which was reported at Gamba Police Station under OB number 06/12/2024, has caused distress to his family on his whereabouts and safety. Further, the incident raises serious concern regarding the protection of fundamental rights of individuals pursuant to Article 29 of the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security on the following. 1. Could the chairperson provide a report on the whereabouts of Mr. John Kopesha Abdirova and the status of investigation by the police on his disappearance as reported under the OB number 06/12/2024. Number 2, what measures has the government taken to ensure that the said person is expeditiously traced and reunited with his family? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Wario. Tongoyo, where is it? Yes, Dida Raso, can you bring a statement in 2 weeks?
Obliged, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next, Geoffrey Ruku, member from Mbeere North.
Honorable Speaker, I rise to request for statement regarding tax incentives claimed by special economic zones, developers, operators, and enterprises. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44-2C, I rise to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning regarding the tax incentives claimed by special economic zone developers, operators, and enterprises by way of waiver and exemptions. Honorable Speaker, the Special Economic Zone Act of 2015 was enacted to inter alia provide a framework for establishment of special economic zones, the promotion and facilitation of global and local investment. Over 35 special economic zones have been gazetted. Despite the large number of gazetted zones and massive tax incentives that they claim annually, the number of special economic zones investors in the country seem to be incommensurate, and the special economic zones are categorized with low productivity, which has made their impact indemonstrable. Further, the Special Economic Zones Authority website shows that only 3 of the gazetted special economic zones are public, while the rest are private. Honorable Speaker, the foregoing state of the affairs could be the pointers to a likelihood of a compromised integrity of special economic zones. This could particularly be exploited by unscrupulous land dealers purportedly selling the land within the special economic zones without paying taxes and duties to unsuspecting Kenyans and investors into economic exploitation without any economic benefits. Honorable Speaker, it is again and the type of jobs created for Kenyans by each of the zones, including the quantum of pay-as-you-earn taxes paid for each year. 4, what quantum of exemptions and waivers have been extended to each economic zone developer, operator, and enterprise in respect of corporation tax, withholding taxes, value-added taxes, including VAT on imports and import duties for each year since 2015. 5, what measures has the National Treasury, the Kenya Revenue Authority, and the Special Economic Zone Authority put in place to forestall abuse of special economic scheme, including the reporting mechanisms? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Ruku. Chair of Finance, Kimani.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I'd like to thank Honorable Roko for being seized of this matter. Honorable Speaker, the Finance Act of 2023, we created several incentives to SEZs and EPZs in this country. However, since that enactment, Honorable Speaker, we've seen a lot of gazettement of very new and many those SEZ and EPZs. Some of them are even private people's properties. Honorable Speaker, the questions being sought by Honorable Ruko, we would like to handle this matter comprehensively. And so my request would be, even if you would approve, that instead of submitting just a statement to this House, Honorable Speaker, that we make it an inquiry, so that we make sure that we sort out these loopholes that these unscrupulous businesses are using in our SEZs and EPZs, denying us the required revenues, Honorable Speaker, and making it uncompetitive to other businesses and manufacturers that do not necessarily operate within these SEZs and EPZs, much of which, as I've said, have been irregularized, Honorable Speaker. So our request as a committee is that if we are to answer the 5 questions sought by the Honorable Roko comprehensively, then we'd like to make an inquiry, we'd like to make it an inquiry, visit those SEZs, visit those EPZs, see the actual impact on the losses made in terms of our revenues, both pay, VAT, excess, and all those other taxes, Honorable Speaker, and even the impact of that on export and the competitiveness of the products made in these EPZs and SEZs vis-a-vis those that are made by other manufacturers and businesses that don't necessarily operate in this privileged space, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. I will exercise my discretion on this. You may proceed under 218(2), and the committee can proceed as you have proposed. Time limit, I'll give you a month. Thank you. Yes, Jared? Jared?
Firstly, I thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity. And I've got quick twin issues to run by you, if you allow me. Firstly,
something related to this or totally different?
No, different. I thought we are done with statements.
There is one more statement.
All right.
I'll give you an opportunity after
thank
that.
you. Thank you.
The next statement is Ondo. Something to do with what? Yes?
Speaker, I was just wondering loudly, under the standing orders of this House, special economic zones are oversighted by the Committee of Trade, Industry and Cooperative. An inquiry thought of through by the chair of the Committee of Finance probably it would have been appropriate if there could be some kind of collaboration or a joint committee, because occasionally the same issues, we grapple with the same issues in our committee to wonder what's the economic impact of the incentives, or do they simply amount to tax expenditures that are adding no value to the economy of this country? So I was just seeking your indulgence if you could make it a joint committee.
When the statement came to me, take your seat, I actually thought in that direction, but when I read it carefully, it is dealing with matters of taxes and finance much more than trade. But should it be necessary for the two committees to jointly act, I'll direct the clerk to speak to both of the chairmen and advise accordingly. But I think the pertinent issues raised relate much more to taxation and finance than trade. But you have a point, it had crossed my mind severally when I looked at the matter. Next member for Mwala, Vincent Musyoka. Yes, Kawaya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44-2C, I rise to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security regarding the mysterious death and cremation of Mr. William Alfred Mulwa Mutilangi, a Kenyan citizen of passport number CK32227. Honorable Speaker, until his death, Mr. Mutilangi was a renowned innovator working for Pepsi International in the state of New York, United States of America. Following his death, his remains were cremated in the USA by people who were not related to him under a power of attorney prepared by Kahudhu and Co-Advocates, a Kenyan law firm. The power of the attorney was obtained by one Mr. Bakari, an alleged Tanzanian national who claimed to be the deceased son. Honorable Speaker, of note, the deceased relatives were neither aware nor informed of the cremation, and this raises concerns on the motive and the hurried cremation. The family of the deceased has not been able to establish the cause of death because the funeral home where the remains of Mr. Mutilangi had been preserved declined to provide information, citing that it was receiving many inquiries from multiple interested parties. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security on the following matters. 1, what is the status of investigations into the suspicious hospitalization, mysterious death, and hurried cremation of Mr. Mutilangi in the USA under a power of attorney by Kahudhu and advocates under unclear circumstances without involvement of the family of the deceased? 2, what steps has the government taken to ensure that all perpetrators of the death and the issuers of the suspicious power of attorney for the cremation of Mr. Mutilangi are brought to book and prosecuted? 3, what actions has the government taken to ensure that Mr. Mutilangi's family is protected from threats by persons likely to be associated with his death, including securing them from being disinherited from the estate of their deceased kin? 4, what measures has the government put in place to ensure that all Kenyans who die in the diaspora are well preserved and their remains efficiently transported back to their families if they so wish? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Vincent, are you sure you directed this statement to the correct committee? If your man died in the US, don't you think it's more a foreign affairs matter than internal affairs? Yes, Raso? Just let me hear Raso.
Okay.
Give to Dida Raso.
Mr. Speaker, I think you are right,
yes,
because that is a matter for foreign affairs, and not actually Ministry of Interior, because the death happened in a foreign land.
It's a matter in foreign jurisdiction, Kawaya, so we route your request to the committee chaired by Honorable Koech. Is it Defense and Foreign? I think they'll do more justice to your response than internal security.
Maybe, Mr. Speaker, the thinking around this is that there's a criminal element to this statement, and I am wondering how the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is going to be capable to handle the criminal
you have
element.
your day with the internal affairs. Don't come back complaining.
Mr. Speaker.
Eh?
Unless, Mr. Speaker, yeah.
Honorable Kawaya.
All right.
I'm advised by the clerk, and I believe to be true, that your matter will be handled by Defense and Foreign.
Defense and Foreign.
Yes.
Thank you.
So if you want to make any progress inquiry, go to Defense and Foreign.
That would be...
Did Araso and his team have very little to do with foreign jurisdiction.
I can see.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jared Okello.
Yes. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity. I've got two quick issues to run by you and by the House, Honorable Speaker. Firstly, is to thank you, Mr. Speaker, and your office for the material and emotional support that you offered the Okello family when we lost our brother Shem, Reverend Shem Okello.
Our collective condolences to you.
As contemplated in the bill, are outrightly unconstitutional. And therefore, this House cannot proceed, should not really proceed to process this bill in the manner it is currently crafted. And I would really be inviting you to make a ruling before we can proceed with this motion. But let me say this. First, on the issue of the head of public service, Honorable Speaker. The bill is attempting to establish the office of the head of public service, Honorable Speaker, outside the Constitution. When you read the Constitution at Article 154, Article 154 of the Constitution establishes the office of the Secretary to the Cabinet with very clear functions and powers, Honorable Speaker. And I won't read them because they are clear. Members can read it for themselves. Article 154. As a matter of fact, if you allow me, 154, because I want to be mindful of time. 154, there is established the office of the Secretary to the Cabinet, which is an office in the public service. It goes on and on to enumerate the functions of this office as one, being in charge of the cabinet office, two, being responsible for arranging the business and keeping the minutes of the cabinet, and three, conveying the decisions of the cabinet to the appropriate persons or authorities, four, to have other functions as directed by the cabinet. Honorable Speaker, if you go to the bill, what the bill is assigning this office is laughable. And I'll be asking Honorable Mbui to assist me for the time being.
Let me listen to him.
Which page is that? This bill, Honorable Speaker, is attempting to assign the proposed head of the public office to be the chief of staff of the president, to be the administrative head of the executive office of the president, and previously to be the custodian of the seal, which I'm thinking now the committee has removed, okay? And so on and so forth, and to perform any such other functions as may be assigned by the president. Honorable Speaker, there is nothing in these functions as proposed in the bill that are not being performed by the Secretary of the Cabinet, which is a constitutional office established under Article 154 of the Constitution. So in other words, this House is being invited to create some kind of mongorel, to create some kind of office that will superintend over a constitutional office. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Speaker, we are being invited in broad daylight to establish an office through an act of parliament, to lord over a constitutional office under Article 154 of the Constitution, Honorable Speaker. That to me is outrightly unconstitutional. There is no other way you can keep it, Honorable Speaker. If you really want to establish such an office with distinct functions, then there is no shortcut. Just go to the Constitution and amend it. Amend the Constitution and remove powers from the cabinet, from the Secretary of the Cabinet, and assign them to the office of the head of public service. But more importantly, Honorable Speaker, the head of public service is also going to attempt to perform functions that are only meant for the Public Service Commission. Public Service Commission, under Article 233 of the Constitution, Honorable Speaker. We are not even aware, I'm not even aware, because the bill is silent. Is this office, is this a state office or a public office? It's not even clear here. Because if it were a state office, it will be a different ballot, because there's no way you can establish a state office through an ordinary statute. I stand to be corrected. You cannot. You cannot. And you cannot establish a public office which can only be done by the Public Service Commission and make it superior to a constitutional office under Article 154 of the Constitution. That is my issue with that particular office. I want to go to the second office. The office of the Chief Administrative Secretary. Honorable Speaker, Article 152 of the Constitution is very clear. It is the article that establishes the cabinet, and the cabinet is clearly composed of the president, the deputy president, the attorney general, and who? And the cabinet secretaries. Okay? I give a specific number of cabinet secretaries. Honorable Speaker, the Constitution goes ahead at Article 155 and establishes the office of the principal secretary. Honorable Speaker, the architecture of the Constitution, if you read it logically, Honorable Speaker, you will see that from the cabinet secretary, the second in line is the principal secretary, with distinct functions. Distinct functions. I want just to read for you one of the functions of the principal secretary under Article 155. Article 155 of the Constitution. There is established the office of the principal secretary, which is an office in the public service. Which is an office in the public service. Honorable Speaker, I'm looking for the functions of the cabinet of the principal secretary. Honorable Speaker, 155, yes. 155, no, my eyes are failing me. Okay. Okay, add 155, subarticle 2. Each state department shall be under the administration of a principal secretary. Under the administration of a principal secretary. The Constitution did not contemplate that at some point in time, a House of Parliament would sit and purport to establish another office outside the Constitution, to be somewhere between the Cabinet Secretary and the Principal Secretary. And the Principal Secretary. There is nowhere. The Constitution, the drafters of the Constitution, could not have imagined that at some point in time a parliament would create an office outside the Constitution. Would create an office through a statute, an ordinary statute.
Order. There's a point of order from...
But I am also... I'm also on a point of order.
Use the mic.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. May I draw the attention of my minority leader to Article 132, Sub-Article 4 of the Constitution of Kenya, which provides that the President may perform any other executive function provided for in this Constitution or in a national legislation, and except as otherwise provided for in this Constitution, may establish an office in the public service in accordance with the recommendations of the Public Service Commission. While he's at it, may he address that particular point? That's the Constitution of Kenya. Thank you.
And let me educate my good friend, the Honorable Karoli. The same Constitution under Article 234, Sub-Article 3A. Okay? Just go to Article 234, Sub-Article 3A. And it says clauses 1 and 2 shall not apply to any of the following offices in the public services. One is state offices. In other words, the Public Service Commission cannot establish a state office. If you go to this bill, the Chief Administrative Secretary is characterized as a state office. Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker. I think he is now properly educated. Honorable Speaker, there is no way an office.
Wind up.
Okay, I'm winding up. And I'm very happy that, Honorable Speaker, that you've given me this kind of opportunity to address these issues.
I've overindulged you.
You've overindulged me. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the functions of the Chief Admin Secretary in the bill, Honorable Mbui again help me. Okay. Very, very briefly. The functions of the Chief Admin Secretary. He or she shall be responsible for, among other things, responding to issues relating to the portfolio assigned to the office, liaising, representing the Cabinet Secretary at any meeting, performing any other duties assigned by the Office of the Attorney General and Cabinet Secretary. In other words, a plain reading of this bill tells you that the Chief Admin Secretary shall be responsible to the Cabinet Secretary. In other words, he or she shall not be responsible to the Principal Secretary. So in short, you are creating this office above that of the Principal Secretary. He is essentially a Deputy Cabinet Secretary. And you are creating this office outside the Constitution. Mr. Honorable Speaker, this is an arena that we should be careful not to venture into. Because if we do so, we shall be setting ourselves as a house to very needless litigation. And you know the verdict, Honorable Speaker, without really preempting. These ones, if it goes to any court, will be declared unconstitutional. So why should we waste time? Why must we waste taxpayers' time deliberating on these issues which are very clearly unconstitutional? Therefore, I want to plead with you. I want to urge you, Honorable Speaker, that you discontinue this debate and retreat to make a considered ruling on the issues I have raised before the processing of this motion or bill can proceed, yes, one way or the other. With those preliminary remarks, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Again, there's a misconception here. If you look at Article 234, it took me a bit of time to get it. The powers of the public service, the disciplinary powers of the public service, the power to hire, fire, and discipline, are what are restricted in terms of how they exercise those powers in relation to state officers. Because there are special procedures for state officers when you exercise those powers as a public service. And I can give him an example. I was the first chief of staff in the Republic of Kenya. When we created that office, there was no power But the president had the power, executive power, to organize his executive office. So did the prime minister. So there are offices in a presidential system of government that are created not necessarily by law. If you check the history of chief of staff in the United States, the first holder was a presidential appointee by executive order. And over time, it has gained currency. Simply because in a presidential system, such as the one we have, there are officers that cannot exercise both what you call bureaucratic power as well as political power. A permanent secretary cannot interface in a presidential system with parliament. So in a presidential system such as the one in the United States, the presidents have their chiefs of staff who can exercise both bureaucratic power as well as executive power and interface politically with Congress. And that power is vested in the president. And what he's quoting under Article 234 limit the authority of public service in terms of hiring, disciplining, and directing the state officers. But it does not extend, it does not limit the power of the president under Article 132 to establish offices in the executive as he so wishes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Murugara hold Jared Okello.
Yes.
On the same issue. Murugara, you are the chair of the committee. Hold. I'll come back to you.
Honorable Speaker.
Hold your horses, Murugara.
Honorable Speaker, even as I align myself with the sentiments as expressed by my brother, Honorable Wandai, I did read the ruling by the High Court on this same matter, Honorable Speaker, with a tooth comb, because I needed to understand the gist of this entire issue. And one thing that caught my attention, Honorable Speaker, is what the court said, that we are being governed by a constitutional dispensation of the year 2010. And this constitution went into details as highlighting these offices, some of which are now under question. And one fundamental issue that these judges raised is that the position of cabinet secretaries, chief cabinet secretary, chief administrative secretary, was going to be a person just between the cabinet secretary and the principal secretary. So by inference, chief administrative secretary is a boss to a principal secretary. And Honorable Speaker, what the court said that we are still not addressing holistically is that if Kenyans thought that that office was going to be as important as this House would want to make it, the Kenyans would have put it into law in the Constitution. And the court went on to say that if indeed this position will be as important, Kenyans will have to have a say on it by way of a referendum, Honorable Speaker. Why straddle a very important consideration in enactment of these offices, Honorable Speaker? So even as you retreat to come up with an in-depth ruling, as you have always done before, let us try to look at the participation of Kenyans as infusing this office into law, Honorable Speaker. Otherwise, we were so embarrassed as a House by the decision of this court, of our courts, and I don't want this House to be always subjected to another round of embarrassment each time we create laws here. Honorable Speaker, we don't make laws in vain. And therefore, let us go deep and look into this. I know there are people who are angling for jobs, those who campaigned for UDA or Kenya Kwanza by extension, and they are so desperate to have something in their name. But let us do things according to the dictates of our laws and not overreach and hence face embarrassment in our courts of law, Honorable Speaker. I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Tedious repetition. I think
Mr. Speaker, this office, historically, I can remember I was in government when the Constitution of 2010 was in process. Historically, this came from the office of then Assistant Minister. That's where this all comes from. And what the constitution at that time, the argument at that time, that often it was found that the assistant ministers really didn't have specific jobs that they were doing. As permanent secretary, we are always asked, without much guidance, that to just ensure your assistant minister has something to do, assign them jobs to do. And therefore, the argument that came when the constitution was coming was basically that this is not necessary, and therefore that position of the assistant minister was removed. And that is how later on, after the constitution had been in place, the new government was being put, then it was felt that we needed chief administrative secretary.
What you are saying is incorrect. I was an assistant minister for 5 years, and my letter of appointment from the president specifically listed out what my duties and responsibilities were as an assistant minister.
Basically, those duties, Mr. Speaker, with all due respect.
The minister never operated at the whim of the minister.
With due respect, with all due respect, Mr. Speaker, those actually were just to assist the minister, basically all of them. But let's not go into that argument. Now, when we come to this, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the positions that they're supposed to do, if they're going to liaise with the parliament, or this parliament, every time we have had to interact with, we have been very clear that we need to liaise with the cabinet secretary. Now, this position is creating another level. Mr. Minister, if you're saying they are going to liaise with the county government on matters of concurrent mandate, Mr. Speaker, we have the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee, whose job is basically that. So again, that is not. Then providing interministerial and sectoral coordination. We have the office, like in this case, the cabinet secretary who is actually dealing with that matter, whole cabinet secretary. So once again, why are we creating this position? Mr. Speaker, representing the cabinet secretary in any meeting, that actually is where the issue started. And so we are just going backwards. So Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to add that we are actually going backwards in terms of our constitutionalism. So what we have actually changed in 2010, we are clawing back and bringing them through statutes. And I think that is not, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think that is very proper.
Are you done? Morogara? Yes, Chepkonga.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. In order to have located this matter properly, I expected the minority leader to have quoted extensively from the case law. This matter has been litigated upon, Mr. Speaker. He knows the decision of the court in Kenyatta 2, when this position was declared to be unconstitutional. It was declared to be unconstitutional because there was no law that established it. In fact, the advice from court at that time, Mr. Speaker, was go and pass the law in Parliament. What they decided was not to pass the law. Article 94 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, which I'd like to happily read to my very good friend, the Honorable Wandai, the minority leader. If you read Article 94.2, 94.5, it says no person or body other than Parliament has the power to make provision having the force of law in Kenya except under authority conferred by this Constitution or by legislation. Mr. Speaker, it is the very reason why this bill is in this House this afternoon. In fact, so that we can debate, agree, disagree. And Mr. Speaker, the second issue that I expected the minority leader to have addressed, he should have read the report of the committee, and he would have seen very clearly that his side, except one, the Honorable Matienda Molo, dissented with regard to the matters that were raised in this bill. So unless, Mr. Speaker, we are being held hostage by the minority leader on account of the Honorable Atienda Amolo's advice, which I want to believe that he has taken legal advice from a minority, a report of the committee, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you read Article 232, which my very good friend, the former Chief of Staff, 132, Mr. Speaker, he has clearly stated the position. The only thing that the minority leader did was to skirt around, not wanting to address the issue, because he had been advised by the Honorable Atienda Amolo, so he could not depart from it. No. How can you point of order where you received advice from a dissenting member?
Yes, Wandai.
Honorable Speaker, I don't think the Honorable Chaponga is in order to continually imply that I got legal advice from the Honorable Atienda Amolo. He is, in essence, casting aspersions on my ability, my capacity to decipher legal and constitutional issues and to actually articulate them in the manner I have always done here. Yeah, is he in order? Could you rule him out of order, Honorable Speaker?
I don't know if Atienda Amolo advised you, but it's not wrong to be advised. Especially when you are the leader the way you are. Why is Robert Mbui next to you? He's your assistant and he advises you. And even when you started your argument, you said, Mbui will help me as I go along. Go on. Give Chepkonga the mic.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Wind up, Chepkonga.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, you know, I don't know why anyone would have a problem with my co-chair, in which, you know, Mr. Speaker, you appointed the caucus of lawyers to represent this House. And he knows he receives ample advice from the Honorable Atienda Amolo. So we have no problem. He's a senior counsel, Mr. Speaker. So in fact, to receive counsel from senior counsel, it's very good. And in fact, you should be very happy with it. Mr. Speaker, you know, Article 234 of the Constitution gives power to the Public Service Commission to create and abolish offices. Mr. Speaker, so you know, the Public Service Commission indeed created the offices, and as a consequence of that, it was said that there was no law. In fact, Mr. Speaker, so that you can anchor this into the law, that is the very reason why this legislation, this bill is pending before this House this afternoon.
You've made your point.
Thank you.
Murugara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me thank you for allowing this debate to go on and commend you for that. But unfortunately, what has been raised as a point of order by the leader of minority is actually the dissent of Honorable Atienda Amolo to the committee report, or reports which we have already tabled in this House. And unfortunately, the leader of majority never took time to read those reports. The minority leader did not take time to read the two reports. We have the substantive report and an addendum. And these actually would have settled his issues. And may I confirm to the House that those reports are now reports of the House. And therefore, whatever is in there are acts of this House and cannot be wished away. First and foremost, may I speak about the head of public service. That office substantially differs with what we have in this particular bill, and the reason it differs is because we also, as a committee, had issues in the way it was being formed. Therefore, we had to align the formation of that office with...
There's a point of order from...
Yes.
Member for Funyula. What's the point of order?
I had to disrupt or to interrupt my good friend Sir George, and Sir George used to be a good man the last time. Point of Honorable Speaker, what the leader of minority is making reference to is the bill. What has been indicated on the order paper is the bill. The committee report is not in the order paper. So for Sir George to refer to us the committee report that's not on the order paper, I will need your guidance, Honorable Speaker, because we have been making this mistake, whether it's a mistake or it's not a mistake, continuously, and we must draw that line very clear. A committee report that's supposed to be debated must be diarized on the order paper. What is on the order paper is the bill, and the bill has not been amended, has not been withdrawn to be amended, so that it's presented in the organized form that complies with the Constitution. Probably in the fullness of time, you might be required to guide the House on how do we proceed. Do we proceed to debate the committee report, or do we proceed to debate the bill? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Undo, the reason I keep on urging committee chairs to bring and table their committee reports is because they're part of the process of legislation. And once you have a committee report tabled in the House, and we always insist that it must come at least before the bill goes to committee stage, is to be part of the information available to members in carrying out their debates. So Murugara is not out of order. He has the right to make reference to the report. You also have a right to make reference to that report. In fact, you have a right to extract material from that report to amend the bill at a committee stage if you wish. That's why we have those committee reports.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That is 100% correct. And I wish to inform Honorable Oundo, my friend too, that when the leader of majority was moving this bill, he actually, in extenso, relied on the report to say this is how the bill is going to be amended clause by clause. And that is the process of legislation. The reason the bill is committed to a committee is so that the committee is able to look at the constitutionality of the bill and how else it can be aligned to policy and to any other statute as it may be necessary. So I wish to state to the House that the office of the head of public service, which is proposed to be created, has several amendments under that provision so as to align it with the Constitution. And therefore, it implores upon the leader of minority to actually read the proposed amendments. Then he would have possibly a change of mind. If he does not read and he reads only the bill, then he would possibly be entitled to make the arguments he's making here, but that has to be in his contribution to this debate. It cannot be a preliminary point to be decided on. And that's where he has actually gone wrong. He has digressed from the debate we are having. We have made it elaborate that the office of the head of public service is going to be in the executive office of the president. It is not as we have it here. Number two, it is an office in the public service. That now falls under Article 132 and 134 of the Constitution. Therefore, that cures the defect. The rest of it, we have analyzed what the functions are, which are not in a conflict at all with the office of the Chief Cabinet Secretary, because we know this exists. In the draft bill, there may have been a conflict, but that has been removed. Therefore, I would urge the leader of minority to look at the report and then form possibly a second opinion. What he has elaborately told the court is the dissenting opinion of Honorable Otiende Amolo, and that is going to be the debate for those who are opposing the bill. But Honorable Otiende Amolo opposed after we actually made all these recommendations which are within his knowledge. As regards the Chief Administrative Secretary, again, kindly do read the report and the addendum. It's very important because we were alive to the fact that this position had been announced twice by the courts. Therefore, we had to seal the loopholes which are likely to be there when it comes to the positions vis-a-vis what is provided for in the Constitution. So what have we done? Number one, we have made it no mention whatsoever. If it is mentioned in the bill, we have recommended that these are not state officers. State officers are created or are provided for by the Constitution. These are not state officers. They are offices that are established under the Public Service Commission. So that, in that manner, number one, we have complied with the Constitution.
Honorable Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity. If you read Article 260 of our Constitution, it describes who a state officer is. And one fundamental issue around it is that anyone who gets a pay from consolidated funds is a state officer. So how you are going to remove these people who will be earning their perks from the exchequer from being called state officer, Honorable Speaker? Why are we shooting ourselves in the foot just to appease some 22 people who are idling out there, Honorable Speaker? Let us follow the law and do what the law prescribes.
And unfortunately, they may be 10, not 22. They may be 5. We don't know what that number is going to be, because it is now reserved for the Public Service Commission to work on the element of complement of that particular office. But let me make it clear. State officers are actually set out in the Constitution, who they are. Now that CASs are not in there, then they are excluded. They are not state officers, and as such, we cannot say they do fall under that provision of the Constitution. Number two, we have also redefined what their functions are, and principally, they are assistants to cabinet secretaries. They are going to work under the direction of the cabinet secretaries to assist them in meetings, to assist them in government portfolio, and whatever other assignment cabinet secretaries are going to assign to them. We have not whatsoever provided that they are in between cabinet secretaries and the principal secretaries. In fact, there is no mention of the principal secretary in the provisions we are talking about. In essence, what we are saying, it is that these CASs will be assisting, they will be helping cabinet secretaries, while principal secretaries are the technocrats. The people are supposed to be accounting officers and are supposed to administer the various state departments which are under them. There is no provision whatsoever that a CAS is going to administer a state department, whether assigned to him by the minister or otherwise. There is no provision for that. That is not one of the functions we have. Therefore, looking at this in totality, Mr. Speaker, I believe what is being raised by the leader of minority and those who have supported it are actually debates that are supposed to be in opposition to the bill, and this can only be sustained if they have read the reports, the report itself and the addendum. They must also know that we have the third reading of this bill, the committee of the whole house, where all the amendments that are proposed will actually be executed. The arguments being advanced now will totally change once this bill goes through the committee of the whole house, because unless those amendments are within their knowledge, they cannot be hard to say that what we are saying is unconstitutional. Therefore, in my view, the debate by the leader majority is preemptive, it is premature, and it is a debate. It is not a point of law that would amount to a point of order on constitutionality, and therefore kindly do overrule him.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, you are being invited here by the leader of minority to give a ruling on the constitutionality of the two items that are contained in the National Administration Amendment Bill. Honorable Speaker, the issues of the CASs is an issue that has been canvassed in almost 4 courts in this country, with rulings that have been delivered. And the dissenting ruling of Justice Ongundu was very clear. She had no issue about the constitutionality of these positions. She had issues about the numbers, On the same issue, the court where Visram sat, they're also very clear about numbers. And the issue that came in the first case was about process. Now, the process issue was keyword because the court said because there was no public participation and because there was no interviews, the recruitment process had not been done properly. Therefore, it was ruled as unconstitutional on the basis that it did not follow the process as established in the Constitution. The current administration, what it did was to ensure that they go through do the things that the court had requested that be done. One, public participation was done to cure the issue that had been raised. Secondly, the process of advertising, recruitment, interviewing, and recruitment was also followed. So the issues that were raised in the first case were set aside on the basis that the government followed the process as prescribed by the court, Honorable Speaker. So the issues of constitutionality as raised by the Honorable Wandai do not hold water, especially on a bill which has gone through the committee, and the committee has looked at it and seen the issues they are in and have said that these issues as raised, and I have read the dissenting opinion of the senior counsel, Otiende Amolo. And in his dissenting opinion, is actually very shaky, based on the rulings that have been made, based on what Parliament is in the Parliament is in the process of curing the issues that the court has talked about. So, Honorable Speaker, reject and refuse to be invited by the Honorable Wandai to get into the debate of the bill, because that is what he's inviting you to do. On the issues of constitutionality, this Parliament and these honorable members are able to sit to look at the issues that are in there, make amendments at committee of the whole, and ensure that the bills that we pass in this House are constitutional, are lawful, and they're going to take us forward as a country, and not the back and forth in which Honorable Wandai is inviting you to entertain. Honorable Speaker, refuse that entertainment. Again, Honorable Speaker, on the issue of the head of the public service, the office of the head of public service, as initially construed within the law as also the office of the chief of the secretary to the cabinet, we are trying to draw a line and say we can have within the office, the executive office of the president, a head of public service who can do the work that can be done without necessarily having to have the chief, the secretary to the cabinet do the same jobs. We have seen inefficiencies. We want to cure the inefficiencies. But the Honorable Wandai is inviting you to look at a constitutional issue that is non-existent, especially on the office of the head of public service. Honorable Speaker, I will request you to reject that invitation, allow this Parliament to debate these laws and make a position, and we pass a good law that can stand the test and can also stand any litigation in any other court in this country. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, honorable members. Thank you, Honorable Wandai. I've heard you. It is not a motion for you to reply to. No. There is no right of reply here. You raised your protestations and members have contributed. You will reply. Okello will want to reply. Everybody else who spoke will want to reply. There is no provision for that. I direct as follows that the debate at order number 10 will proceed. Once it is done, if the speaker here will not be on the chair, whoever will be relieving me, no question will be put until I give a ruling tomorrow afternoon before we move to the next level. So who was on the floor? Honorable Gertrude Mbeyu, Kilifi, women rep, was on the floor with 8 minutes to go. She's not here. Now the screen is full. I don't know if it's full for this bill. Rindikiri Mugambi is not here. He's on the screen. Robert Mbui.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to reject this bill, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, you know what this bill seeks to do is actually what Kenya Kwanza opposed vehemently during the 2022 campaigns. Mr. Speaker, you know that we were told that this regime would not create offices. In fact, we were told that the debate during the last campaigns was between those that are looking for positions and those that are responsible and responsive to the needs of the mamamboga, the boda, the so-called hustler. But Mr. Speaker, what is the reality? That when we came into this house, the first order of business, Mr. Speaker, was the creation of office of Prime Cabinet Secretary. Immediately after that, the creation of the office of the official leader of the opposition. Now, this bill confirms what we have always said, that the intention was always to create offices. Mr. Speaker, here, the first office being created, which we have said is unconstitutional, is that office of the head of the public service. And Mr. Speaker, before the committee in its wisdom rejected some of the proposals, one of the proposals was that the head of the public service would be the custodian of the public seal. In essence, you are going to take away the responsibility of the Attorney General and take it to State House and give it to a person who sits there as a personal assistant to the head of state. Mr. Speaker, this was really ridiculous. I want to thank the committee for having rejected that, because that has been pulled out and the committee says that wasn't making sense. But Mr. Speaker, more importantly is the creation of the offices of chief administrative secretaries. Mr. Speaker, this is an office we've all seen. The purpose of these offices is actually to reward political losers. Look at what happened in the last regime under Jubilee. All those people that were losing elections and were aligned to the regime of the day were being given these positions. Mr. Speaker, you remember when we had actually assistant ministers. I remember the late Honorable Kalembe Ndile. He stood on the floor of this house and he told Kenyans that what assistant ministers do is to have a cup of tea in their offices and read newspapers because there was not enough work. I wonder what has created more work. Is there more work under the current system than before? So, Mr. Speaker, I'm standing.
Order, Honorable Mbui. Honorable Meli is on a point of order.
That is it in order for Honorable Mbui to misinform the House that the issues raised in local maybe bars and whatever are actually brought to this House, because what he's actually saying is that the late Kalembe Ndile did allude that if you are an assistant minister, then you need only a cup of tea, and that's the whole of the office. There are many offices that have been created that are substantive to this country. So is it in order for him to actually misinform the House?
Continue, Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for telling me to continue. That means you agree that we ignore the point of order. But, Mr. Speaker, I just want to finish by saying that as a country, we need to be careful the promises we make. And when we make promises, it is important to also keep them. In fact, I can say there's so many good ideas that come out of the leaders' mouths. Unfortunately, the implementation becomes a problem. If Kenya was to follow the promises made by leaders, our children today would all have laptops, Mr. Speaker, all the way from grade 1 up to university, Mr. Speaker, because that was a promise that was given during campaigns. If promises were to be followed, Mr. Speaker, our children would have free primary education, free secondary education, and free university education. We would have free health, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, what happens is that we say one thing and we mean another. And, Mr. Speaker, because I feel that this regime is only intending to find a way to reward the people that lost the last election and also to reward those that have defected, and that is a way to lure them. Mr. Speaker, I oppose this bill.
Honorable Raso.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this bill on the many grounds. One of it, we have been having offices in this country. In the last administration, we had the chief administrative secretaries. It was really confirmed, and many of us agreed that it was not anchored in law. And those chief administrative secretaries, some of them appeared before select and departmental committees of this House, and it left a lot to be desired, because many of us felt, how can an individual who is not known appear before a committee and transact on behalf of a ministry or a department? So for that reason, anchoring these offices in law is really important. Honorable Speaker, Article 234, Sub-Article 2, Sub-Article A, says, subject to this Constitution and legislation. It doesn't isolate only to the Constitution and the legislation. It actually clarifies that the Constitution itself is not holistic unless it is continuously improved by continuous legislation. And Article 94, Sub-Article 5 is clear that only Parliament will make law or create offices and challenge anything that comes up in law that can stand the winds of the time. It is only Parliament, and that is clearly stated in Article 94. Honorable Speaker, Article 234 further says that establish and abolish offices in the public service and appoint persons to hold or act in those offices and to confirm appointments. That is the responsibility of the Public Service Commission, to create offices, abolish them, and also to confirm appointments of individuals. Honorable Speaker, Article 132(4), the functions of the President, 4A. The President, as otherwise provided for in this Constitution, may establish an office in the public service in accordance with the recommendation of the Public Service Commission. What this bill, those of us who sat in that committee realized, is that the President on his own cannot run this great country called Kenya. He will be able to run Kenya by having others who will come on his wings and support his administration. And that is why it doesn't say the President will appoint those officers by fiat. He actually does it, or she actually does it, by consulting with the Public Service Commission. So for that reason, Honorable Speaker, I think for generations, we have had the head of public service, which is a very important office in this land, and at times referred to as the chief of staff. This office has never been anchored in law, yet 4 previous successive administrations have had those offices. But for the first time, the Kenya Kwanza administration realized that we cannot have offices that exist outside both the Constitution and the legislation. And that is why it is being anchored in the laws of the land, so that those...
Other than the first part concerning the assumption of the office of the President Act, I stand to totally oppose this bill. I stand to oppose the National Government Administration Laws Amendment Bill on a matter of principles, on matters of the Constitution, and matters of the spirit of the Constitution of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, the essence of the 2010 Constitution was to make the executive lean, accountable, and less intimidating. Many of us who have been around for some time remember the overbearing nature of the former holders of the so-called office of Head of Public Service. Many remember Honorable Nyachae, Ezekiel Yugi, and the rest. Honorable Speaker, those who drafted the 2010 Constitution sought to cure the excesses imposed by the various offices. Honorable Speaker, let's start looking at the bill one by one. Honorable Speaker, if you go to the one amendments to the National Security Council, Honorable Speaker, Article 240 is explicitly clear what constitutes the composition of the National Security Council. And Honorable Speaker, you are the Speaker here, and you represent the Speaker. And this is a matter that the debate will continue until we are able to resolve this matter conclusively. A committee's report with the amendments, there is no guarantee that those amendments will be carried at the committee of the whole House. So essentially, the substantive document we are dealing with, which could pass with or without amendment, is the published bill. So to come and now hoodwink and tell Kenyans that we have removed the offensive and constitutional provision, so let's debate and pass the bill, is what we used to call, I wouldn't want to say it here, it might be as a parliamentary. Honorable Speaker, when we go to the next provision that deals with the office of the National Security Advisor, ordinarily all over the world, in even enhanced democracies, modern democracies, the office of the National Security Advisor, an advisor is an advisor, works at the helm, at the fiat of the president, at the pleasure of the president. So consequently, Honorable Speaker, cannot be legislated. Let those one work as they are. Honorable Speaker, of course, the most damaging amendment to this particular bill is now the creation of the office of Head of Public Service. Honorable Speaker, and when we look at the provisions that the jobs, the duties that have been assigned, as the bill here, one of them is to be the administrative head of the executive office of the president, which again is not an office defined in the Constitution. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, the decisions of the president, as contemplated in Article 135, are supposed to be in writing and shall bear the seal and signature of the president. That is so instructive that, Honorable Speaker, the nation of Kenya, the people of Kenya, should not lose sight of. At no any time was there any contemplation that somebody else will write on behalf of the president and sign any document for the functions bestowed on the president on behalf of the president. Article 135 has been very clear on the signature and the communication coming from the president. It has been an anomaly all along that you find quite a number of pronouncements that touch on the core mandate of the office of the president, the presidency, the president, signed by any other person other than the president. Honorable Speaker, if indeed the head of the public service serves at the pleasure of the president, as indicated in this bill, that position, therefore, Honorable Speaker, cannot be a state office, as defined under Article 260. That becomes an errand boy of the president to serve at the pleasure of the president. Any incoming administration ought to have and will always have a different style of executing their mandate, of running their government. Saddling them with an office created by an act of parliament that is unconstitutional, Honorable Speaker, is essentially tying the hands of the new administration that could have otherwise wanted to do things in a completely different manner. Honorable Speaker, in the wildest dream, why would any drafter, how would a sponsor of a bill of such a magnitude indicate, Honorable Speaker, that the head of the public service, shall be the custodian of the public seal and any other instruments of state that are not in the custody of any other person? That's where the mischief lies. What mischief do you want to do? The office of the president will auction this country because they have the seal, they have the signature, they'll simply auction this country, enter into any businesses without any reference to any other party. Honorable Speaker, the bill before us creates the non-existent office called the Chief Administrative Secretary. And when you go through the duties assigned to the Chief Administrative Secretary, they do not exist in the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya, 2010. The executive office consists of the president, the deputy president, and the cabinet secretary. And then the accounting officer becomes the permanent or principal secretary. The question all of us are begging to ask, where does the chief administrative secretary fall in the architecture of the executive? That's the question we are asking. He is neither listed under Article 260 of the Constitution as a state officer. What is it? What is it? Any office created in public service is for the specific function. And that's why, Honorable Speaker, you see when you pass an act of parliament, we state that they will have the following officers. And those officers become officers in the public service. And the Constitution of Kenya is expressly clear what constitutes the public service. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the functions assigned to them, to this office, liaise with the parliament. Liaise with parliament as who? The duty to report to parliament is vested in the constitutional offices. That's the president, that's the cabinet secretary, that's the permanent secretary, and the holders of the constitutional office. So how does liaising come in whether and there's none of a constitutional office? Honorable Speaker, they say to liaise with the county governments on matters of concurrent mandate. There are created organs in the Constitution. There are created organs in the County Government Act. So what are we doing here, Honorable Speaker? What are we doing here? Honorable Speaker, we had now we find that one of the functions represent the Cabinet Secretary at any meeting as might be directed by the Cabinet Secretary. Essentially, as Dr. Nyikala has indicated previously, we are creating an office of an assistant minister. Yet in the Constitution, there has not been assigned any person, anybody, any office in the public service or in state office to act as an assistant to the Cabinet Secretary. It is not provided for. So why are we trying to amend the Constitution by legislation, which is obviously a wrong process? Honorable Speaker, indeed, when you look at under Article 260, it calls that the Constitution should be interpreted to advance law. Constitution should be interpreted to advance good governance. Honorable Speaker, this particular bill falls flat of those provisions of the Constitution. I would urge the Speaker to apply himself, drop the promoter of the bill, drop it, go draft it to meet the constitutional requirement and bring it for debate. Leaving the way it is, and normally the way we operate in a Gallatin manner, if all the amendments are defeated, then it goes the way it is. This will be essentially, as we have already agreed, a constitutional bill, the cure cannot be found.
What's your point of order? You can't have a point of order because somebody's already not on the... the honorable member for Busia, Omanyo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm opposing with all my might because my mind is spinning with so many questions. This government, 1 minute, they say the ballooning budget is what they are trying to cut down. And on the other side, they are ballooning that budget themselves with things that Kenyans do not even need. It's not in Kenyans' priorities. Adding these scarce positions is duplicating roles. What does the PS do? What does the CS do? We used to have assistant ministers who never even used to sit in offices. We used just to see them having fun. I think we need to stop having this plethora of additional offices that actually are wasting Kenyans' taxes. Now I know why the government is overtaxing very hardworking, poor Kenyans to give gifts to their friends. Their priorities are bent, and we are not going to just sit there and watch this go on. 1 minute finance bill, another minute housing. Everybody is wondering what exactly are this government's priority. We should not save Kenyans promises like you can save a snow on your hand. It means after 5 years, there will be nothing to show from this government because anything that we have seen has been opposed but forced onto Kenyans, like whether you like it or not. I remember my mom used to put porridge in a little kid who does not want to eat by force in between her laps, and the kid swallows by force. That's what we are seeing with this government. It is killing us instead of giving us hope and giving us like something to wake up to every day. So I oppose. I just have questions for Mr. President. I know Mr. Ichungwa is in here. He will try to answer. What exactly is he trying to achieve by ballooning the same budget he's saying he's cutting down? You cannot cut down something from Paul and add something to Peter, yet you borrowed Paul to pay Peter, who is also, you're going into rounds of problems, wallowing in the same miasma of confusion. I do not understand the Kenya Kwanza government. Every day with the people who are learned, people I look and call honorable members. What do you sit to do in that White House, State House? I saw even in the budget you have added 4 billion to take tea. Is it Jesus cooking that tea? Cut the budget and mean it. Cut the budget so that the teachers, the doctors, the hospitals, we have medicine, instead of adding your friends some token to enjoy themselves. There is nothing these caste people are going to do. We have the PSS and CSS. Ichungwa is a McNaughton's case.
Order, Honorable Romanyo. Ichungwa is on a point of order.
Honorable Speaker, you know there is a rule in our standing orders on relevance. And listening to the member for Busia, she is contributing to the budget-making process ahead of time because the budget-making process is yet to begin. Maybe she can confine herself to the debate on this particular bill. I know she has not read the bill, she has not read the report, therefore she is lost on what to say about the bill. If she can just try and restrict herself to the
Majority
content
leader, you are
of
out of order.
Order, Omanyo,
These
order.
are references I'm giving out.
Order, Honorable Omanyo, order. Order, Honorable Omanyo. Have you exhausted? Yes, the Honorable, no. There is this lady. Proceed, Omanyo, you have not exhausted your time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was just correcting the government and Mr. Ichungwa interrupted. When you are corrected, listen. You are not right. Every time you get it wrong. With all the smart heads we have here, you have gotten it wrong again. I'm simply asking, what is the CAS going to do? And I've sent you to go and ask your president, because this is duplication of roles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Rindikiri Mugambi, followed by the Honorable Meli. Order. Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I like to support this bill with some amendments. Mr. Speaker, this bill touches on 4 key things of importance in administration of law in this country. Mr. Speaker, it touches on the assumption of office of the President, particularly on the assumption of office of the President-elect. Mr. Speaker, it addresses the inclusion of the National Security in the National Security Council and the inclusion secretary to the National Security Council and the principal secretary responsible for defense as additional members of the committee. That, Mr. Speaker, I do support, because I think it is very important that we have in that transition period the secretary to the Security Council, because the shifting of the government and the president being the commander-in-chief in a transition managed properly in the transition. That I support, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when the president-elect is coming to office, he is only represented, according to the current laws, by only 3 members of his team. Now the bill proposes that this number is increased to 6. I think this is very important, because during the transition period, some of the people that are going to be involved in the transition period are members of the president-elect team. And I think that's very important, because once he assumes the office, you need to have a team that is in know of what is happening in the process of time. Mr. Speaker, the other aspect of this bill is it proposes that there be a national security advisor designate into the Security Council. This, Mr. Speaker, I really oppose, because the team in the security docket are all civil servants and in very senior, sensitive security arrangement in the country. Now, once you are bringing in a security advisor, who is not necessarily within the ranks of the security organization, it is not going to be augur so well in terms of putting forward the issues of security in the country. Mr. Speaker, I also, the seal, the public seal, Mr. Speaker, need to be given to an office where the document of the government are kept. And therefore, I'm opposing that this bill, this clause in the bill that seeks to remove the public seal from the office of the Attorney General be rejected, because we can't place it in the public service office. So I oppose that amendment and say that we need to keep the public seal in the office of the Attorney General. Mr. Speaker, the other amendment brought by this bill is the debate that is ahead of us here on the establishment and functions of the end of the public service. Mr. Speaker, the cabinet, the secretary to the cabinet is not necessarily the one to manage the president's office. I support this establishment of the end of public service because he will be in the executive office purely to handle matters of the presidency. And therefore, this is a very important thing. There is nothing in the Constitution that says that this office cannot be established because there is no unconstitutionality that has been established by the argument that had been put by the argument of the speakers who have mentioned. Mr. Speaker, also, I do support that we have the chief administrative secretaries. They have a responsibility. This is a very good office. They will support in the running of the government. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I support the bill.
You realize that this is just one bill. You can't support part of it and oppose part of it. And you realize that it's an omnibus, but you either oppose it or you support it. Without amendments. If you have amendments, yes. Yeah, okay. Okay, if you bring in the right amendments, then that's okay. Proceed, Meli.
Thank you.
I don't know if the chair still has any.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this bill. And Honorable Speaker, I want to, before I proceed, urge the other side of the aisle, of the members, to really read the report by the committee. The JLI committee, led by Honorable Murangara, has made a raft of proposals into this bill. Those particular proposals that he has made are actually informing the discussion that is on today. Honorable Speaker, it's unfortunate that as we discuss this bill, it is a procedure of the House that when a bill is brought to the House on the first reading, the committee gets seized of the matter. They do go through the public participation and all those processes. The committee, under the chairmanship of Honorable Murungara, has just given us very good proposal on this. Honorable Speaker, there are certain issues that I want to speak into, and I think the substantive speaker spoke to it, that the report and its attachment of a committee are part of the legislative processes of the House. So members who are within the House are actually supposed to get seized of this so that we don't go into issues that are not in the debate. Honorable Speaker, the bill tries to speak into the issues that Kenyans have actually spoken into. That one, the courts every other time have challenged the offices that establishes or that tries to establish offices in the country to stick to the Constitution. That is why, if you look at the office of the assumption of office of the President, the positions of the President, of the officers seconded from the office of the President-elect were very few. Now they have been actually increased. This is to give the person of the office of the President-elect a lot of say in the process. And this, Honorable Speaker, is to cure and to make sure that the President-elect has a say in the processes of the assumption of office, with the support of the existing government offices. Honorable Speaker, when you look at the issue of the CAS, the court spoke into this and ruled severally. And that is why you realize that the establishment of the office of the CAS is not actually deputizing or taking away the functions of the CS or the functions of the PS. In fact, the court spoke into the processes. How was the office of the CAS established? It didn't follow the law. But now this bill has gone down and explained. It advertised the position. It actually interviewed the proposed office holders. It went ahead and even put the demands of experiences of 5 years, 15 years, and so forth. So this bill is properly constitutional, and it is properly before this House. And I want to say that what we are discussing currently, we are trying actually to address some of the issues that we were spoken to by the courts and the judges. Actually, that is what the committee looked into, and that is what we are discussing too. On the issue of the office of the head of public service, this one is quite very clear, Honorable Speaker. In the original or in the Constitution, it has been merged together with the office of the cabinet secretary, not cabinet secretary, but the secretary of the cabinet. In this particular case, I think it is in the wisdom of the president that the office of the head of public service be separate for efficiency and for functionality, so that the chief of staff, the head of public service, can be able to attend to issues as a principal assistant to the president, and at the same time, he addresses what the head of public service is supposed to do. Previously, this particular office was not well designated, and that is why the bill is out to make sure that it is well designated, and Honorable Murongara's report has just come out very clearly. What are the functions of the office? What are the duties of the Secretary of the Cabinet? And how that particular office is supposed to operate. So, in essence, Honorable Speaker, this bill is trying to realign and to put into perspective even the role of the National Security Advisor coming into the office or into the council of the National Security Council. All those particular issues are actually very important for the proper running and for even management of these particular offices. Honorable Speaker, I rise and I support this particular bill. And I would urge members that they read the report by the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, who has even went ahead to make several amendments to the proposals in this particular bill, which are very progressive. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I support.
Chepkonga, followed by the Kwanza MP.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is important to locate the matters that have been raised in this bill. Mr. Speaker, a bill is a proposal. It's a proposal that is supposed to be debated upon by this House. If we consider that the clauses that are contained in the bill are okay, we will pass. If they are not okay, Mr. Speaker, then we amend them. And so, Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the committee's report, which has provided a raft of proposals in terms of amendments. Mr. Speaker.
Yes, who is on a point of order? Kawanjiku. What's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, leading the mood of the House on that, under 95, after my good friend finishes to debate, we request that the mover be called to reply.
Overruled. Proceed. Chepkonga.
Thank you
Order.
very much.
Order.
There's nothing.
Point order. What's your point of order? Yes?
The next one.
What's your point?
Yeah.
He's already on a point of order. What's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, this is a house of debate. And members must exhaust
order.
Their...
Order.
Mr. Speaker, I have an issue.
Order. You don't have any order. 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 You are out of order because that issue has already been overruled by the chair. So what's your order, point of order about? Take your seat. Take your... Chepkonga, order. Chepkonga, continue.
Yeah, thank you
Proceed.
very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to contribute on two matters. One, with regard to the
for the benefit of the House. Order. Order. For the benefit of the House. For the benefit of the House, I will repeat this, and I had said before. If the chair is convinced that the rights of even minority is being emasculated by calling for the mover to reply, the chair has the authority to overrule that. Order. Order. You go and read the standing order number 95 all the way to the conclusion, and you will understand it. Proceed.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to contribute on two issues. With regard to, I don't want to repeat what my colleagues have just said. With regard to Article 132(4) on the establishment of offices in the public service by the President, it is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that the President, in his performance of his functions, may establish an office in the public service in accordance with the recommendations of the Public Service Commission. Mr. Speaker, if the Public Service Commission has made recommendation, then that office will be established in accordance with the Constitution. Two, Mr. Speaker, as to whether a matter is constitutional or not. That is the wing, that is something that's supposed to be decided by a different arm of government. It is not incumbent upon this House to tell us this is a matter that is unconstitutional. We will be arrogating ourselves the powers of the High Court to make a determination as to whether a matter is constitutional or not constitutional. Our mandate, Mr. Speaker, is contained in Article 94 and 95 of the Constitution to enact laws. And if you look at our mandate, it is fourfold, Mr. Speaker. It is to legislate, to oversight, to budget, and to represent. There is nowhere, Mr. Speaker, we have been given the mandate to arbitrate over disputes, Mr. Speaker. So, with regard to the issue of making law, we are the House that makes law. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, with regard to establishment of offices, if people took time to read the report of JLAC, they would see that these offices are established for good reason. And one of the reasons why offices are established by the executive with the concurrence of the Public Service Commission is to enable the executive to recruit and to deploy the number of either officers or in this case the CSs that require to deliver the programs of that particular government. Mr. Speaker, you just don't walk into a government and you are hamstringed because you don't have the people. You look for the people, and the Constitution gives you the power to do so. Mr. Speaker, in our oversight role, it is incumbent upon us to determine as to whether we have allocated sufficient money under the budget or if the money is being used for the right purposes. That is our role, Mr. Speaker. It is not our role to curtail the functions of the executive. And, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say that, there are so many things that have been talked about, the purported people to be appointed as CSs. Mr. Speaker, it has been said that, in fact, failures have been will be appointed, people who lost elections. I don't know when losing elections became a crime in this country. People lose elections. In the 2022, people lost elections. In the 2017, people lost elections. In the 2013, people lost elections. People have been losing elections from time immemorial, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Article 27(4) of the Constitution says, no person shall be discriminated on account of anything, including marital status, pregnancy, or even losing an election, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you cannot discriminate somebody on the basis of pregnancy, surely, even losing election, you cannot be discriminated, Mr. Speaker. Even on account of color, Mr. Speaker, the only.
What's your point of order, Rafael Wanjala?
Mr. Speaker, you have heard clearly, honorable member, insinuating that this government does not discriminate against even women who are pregnant. And just recently, KRA discriminated against pregnant women in that department. And that is his government of Kenya, Kwisha, and HIV.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Honorable Speaker.
Proceed, Chepkonga.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. In fact, the Honorable Wanjala, my very good friend, should have taken this legal advice from myself that if there was such discrimination, he should activate Article 27(4), and you can take it to court. That is where those disputes will be arbitrated upon. But if you just talk about them here, we will do nothing. But please take it to court if there's been any discrimination. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, so what I was saying, Mr. Speaker, there is no Kenyan who will be discriminated against. And Article 232 of the Constitution clearly sets out how a Kenyan will be given employment in this country. One, it must be through competition. So there must be an advertisement. Two, there must be merit. If you are qualified, Mr. Speaker, then you are entitled to be appointed into that office. In fact, the people should have been saying, the people that have been were previously appointed were quacks, that they were not qualified in accordance with Article 232 of the Constitution. Nobody has said so. In fact, the only quarrel is that you have nominated my competitors or a person who lost to me. That is not a good reason, Mr. Speaker. Or a person who may take over from me. So that is not, in fact, Honorable Gidero, Mr. Speaker, you know they feel that Honorable Gidero should not be given a job. You know.
MP, order. Honorable Chepkonga, order. The Honorable, no, the MP for Kwanza, and followed by Lady Mayaka. I think that more or
Mr.
less.
Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity. On the very onset, I want to support this bill. But first and foremost, Honorable members of this House, we are all people who have seen quite a number of things. One, the CS, this is Chief Assistant Secretaries, Cabinet Secretaries. Surely we've had this position since independence. We've had assistant ministers who actually are assigned duties by the sitting ministers. Whoever minister is, you know, you cannot be there all through. And they are the people that actually do the duties on the behalf of the minister, apart from the permanent secretaries. And then this was something new. The only thing is that maybe the mistake was that His Excellency the President had so many appointments, more than in the cabinet positions. Otherwise, CSS are actually assistant ministers. We've had this before. And therefore, whatever we are doing here, Mr. Speaker, is to be able to have efficiency in running of the government duties. And therefore, they are there because we want efficiency in the running of the government institutions. Secondly, there's no way you can say because somebody didn't go through the election, and therefore that's why he has been appointed. His Excellency and whoever the methods are is going to use to appoint these cabinet assistant secretaries will be people who actually know, people who actually can be able to work on the behalf of the Kenyans. Therefore, it's wrong for us to start now making noise, oh, see, this one is just making, no. These are positions, Mr. Speaker, you know, I know, that were there before. And I think these positions are there. For example, the HPS is actually head of the public service. This position is there. Head of public service position is there. And therefore, for you to come up here and say, oh, you see, this is a political, no. You don't know what is happening. And we want efficient running government in this country. And therefore, there's nothing like, you know, the only amendment that we may be able to do is that to create the position of the of this, I think it was it's called what the custodian of the public seal, much as a support. On the fourth, I think on the third reading, would be able to amend that because whoever can hold the seal, public seal, you know, it must be a politician, must be a lawyer, and therefore the head of the public service may not be necessarily be a lawyer, and therefore the AG will still have to hold the seal, the public seal, because that to hold a public seal, you must be a lawyer. And therefore, these are some of the things that we are going to do, Mr. Speaker, at the third reading of this bill. And therefore, without wasting time making noise, we are actually making the running of this country efficiently. And therefore, without wasting time, I support this, and we are not creating this because of just for the sake of it. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. We may have some amendments in the third reading, which is acceptable, and we move on. So, thank you so much, and I support this.
Basil, And then Mayaka, briefly. Honorable members, order. It's not a privilege to catch the speaker's eye. It is not right, it's a privilege, so relax.
Thank you, Speaker.
Not everybody catches the speaker's eye. There's a lot of balancing that the speaker has got to do. Both sides of the aisle, gender, region. Proceed, Honorable. No, that's not for debate. But still proceed.
Speaker, I think you need to protect me from the majority leader because my name is Honorable Basil. But he's joking about my third name, which is Ngui, but it doesn't mean what he thinks. So first I want
Majority leader, don't call Honorable Basil Ngui again.
He's joking around, but I need to teach him.
At least the little I know about that language is that's not a very good word. Proceed.
Yeah, in Ikamba it means something different, but in his tribe it means something else. So allow me, Mr. Speaker, first to say I thank Majority Leader to bring this bill, or for bringing the bill. I partially support the bill, and I have reasons why I support it partially. One of the reasons why I support the bill partially is because I have no problem with the introduction of the Secretary to the National Security Council, and also have no problem with the National Security Advisor being the Secretary to the National Security Council, as well as establishment of National Security Council Commission. However, I have a problem with taking the seal from the AG to the public service. And the reason why I'm saying that, if you look at Article 156 of the Constitution, Sub-Article 4, the AG is a principal legal advisor to the government, or to the president, and to the government for that matter. Sub-Article 6 of the same Article 156, the AG is supposed to promote, protect, uphold the rule of law, defend the public interest. In this, by this I mean the interests of Kenyans. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at those functions, it explains very well why the common seal must actually sit with the Attorney General. So that particular proposal, I don't agree with that, and I request Majority Leader to reconsider that. Number two, the establishment of the CAS, Mr. Speaker, I don't have much problem with that, but I would request if we could actually have a capping, because currently Kenyans are shouldering a huge burden of increased wage bill, and if we don't have a capping, then we are going to continue burdening so many Kenyans who are struggling with the increased cost of living. And that's why it's important, as much as we want to also create positions which are very essential, as most of the members have said, we need to understand Kenyans are suffering and try to do cap into that. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, some of the amendments I'm going to make, it's actually in terms of the numbers. I've seen the numbers proposed for the President's Committee is about 20, which I think is a huge number. If we could reduce to about 10, that will actually reduce the wage bill, because I understand in any meetings, of course, the allowances included, and we need to understand also, as much as we need to move forward as a country, also let's try to mitigate and manage increased wage bill. Otherwise, I support the bill with the reservations I've already raised, and I look forward to bring my amendments. Thank you.
Irene Mayaka.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I also stand to partially oppose the bill, and I will confine my statement specifically to Section 12A. But Honorable Speaker, before I give the House my sentiments, I'd just like to tell the member for Kwanza who spoke just before Basil that we need to be very careful when we are making assumptions that relate to the Constitution. Because the moment you say that a CAS is like an assistant minister, then you're introducing an aspect to the Constitution that is tantamount to a popular initiative that requires a referendum to amend that. So we need to be very careful when you are making such assumptions. Honorable Speaker, in reference to clause 12, and Honorable Speaker, what we are trying to do is tantamount to hemorrhaging taxation, because this is like you have a bucket of water that you keep pouring water into that tap, but at the same time, you have made holes in that bucket. So the water is being filled with, the water is filling the bucket, but at the same time, it's spilling out. And the reason why I'm saying this, Honorable Speaker, is because we all know very well that the functions and the wages of public servants and state officers are paid from the taxations of Kenyans. So in essence, we are increasing the wage bill. And Honorable Speaker, in this particular bill, it's not even capping the number of cars. So I'm actually worried for my brother, the Honorable Chair of Budget, and the CS for financial planning, in terms of if you're not capping the number of cars, then how are they going to even be able to budget for the cars that they want to bring on board? Because this is not stated in this particular bill. And Honorable Speaker, if you look at, so the bill tells us about the appointment, qualification, non-qualification, but it does not speak to the dismissment of the cars. And yet, Honorable Speaker, the executive on Chapter 9 speaks very well about the removal from office, dismissal from office. It speaks about dismissal from office. Honorable Speaker, if you could please protect me from the majority leader and his deputy, because they are trying to interrupt me.
Honorable Ichungwa and Honorable Owen Bayer.
Honorable
don't
Speaker,
interrupt, don't interrupt.
Yeah, don't teach me English. I got an A in English. You can't teach me English. Honorable Speaker, I just want to say this, but we cannot...
What's your point of order?
Before, dismissment. I don't know how it is. It means what? Because I've never heard of it.
Proceed, Irene.
Dismissment.
Honorable Speaker, if they were engaging in playing Scrabble, they would know some of these words.
Proceed.
Honorable Speaker, I just want to say this, that we do have in law the clauses that talk about how the removal of office from the other public officers and state officers. But this particular bill does not speak to, if, for example, you want to remove from office a cast, that is not mentioned anywhere. And I hope the Chair of Justice is listening to this, and together with his committee, they will take that into consideration. Honorable Speaker, the other thing that I want to speak to is in terms of the responsibility and the duplication that is in the responsibilities that have been outlined for the cast position. Honorable Speaker, when you talk about liaising with Parliament, every ministry in this country has a liaison person to Parliament. Why are we duplicating this role? Honorable Speaker, we've even mentioned there that there will be a liaison person to the county government. And yet, as part of the memorandums, it clearly states that this bill and the functions, this bill does not affect the functions and powers of county government. And yet you're speaking of one of the roles of the CAS being that they will liaise with county governments. So what is going to inform their particular role in that sense, if this already says that they don't work with them? Honorable Speaker, in essence, what we are trying to create is an additional PA to the minister, or someone who is an assistant to the PS, because there's no role here that is very unique and specific for a CAS. Honorable Speaker, the other thing is, and I heard another member saying, that the CAS, these are some of the people who will help the president to run the government. My assumption has always been that the president is running the government, and his responsibilities are clearly outlaid in the Constitution. Why do we want another person to help the president to run the government? Or has the government stopped running? So you want to put in another person whose role is not unique in any way. There is nothing absolutely unique about the role of the CAS that has been introduced for us to be able to even get convinced. Honorable Speaker, the other thing is, right now, we are grappling with a lot of delays in terms of salaries for different state officers and public officers, and yet we want to introduce yet another log of wage bills. Are we really sure as a government, are you really sure that this is something that you want to take on? And Honorable Speaker, I've also looked at the qualification. And for me, I am actually feeling really sad and really sorry for the hustlers of this country. I am waiting for the day a bill will come here that will actually enable hustlers to be able to apply for some of these jobs. Because these things are very specific to a specific type of people in this country, but we're not looking at the masses. What do we have for the masses? What are we telling them? The Kenya Kwanza administration campaigned vigorously on the agenda of the hustlers, that they will defend and protect the hustlers and create employment for them. What employment are you creating for them? If you're only creating jobs for specific people, what are you telling them? And Honorable Speaker, as I finish, I just want to say this, that the chief administration secretaries that we want to give these appointments to, and the qualifications that we've outlaid here and their responsibilities, I think, Honorable Speaker, in all honesty, this is something that the Committee of Legal and Justice did a very hurried job of. And they actually need to reconsider some of these things before they can actually pass it. And Honorable Speaker, I am really hoping that my senior, who I respect very much, the Chair of Justice, is listening to me and will take into considerations the amendments we are giving. Because, Honorable Speaker, when we come here and give our contributions, we are not just doing it for the sake of it. We are doing it because we want to enrich the laws that are coming through this particular parliament. And Honorable Speaker, as I finish, I just want to salute and applaud you for actually overruling the member who tried to stifle debate, because we've had so many experiences of debates being stifled in this House, and yet the essence of us being here is for us to be able to debate, ventilate over issues. And Honorable Speaker, as we always say, even if majority will have their way, let us at least as minority have our say. I thank you.
Yeah, what's your point about the Honorable Ruto? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I just rise pursuant to Standing Order number 95, that this debate has been dwelled for quite some time, and that the mover can be called upon.
Fair enough.
To reply. Thank you.
I now put the question that the mover be called upon to reply. As many as those opinions say aye. Aye. As many as contrary opinions say nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, allow me to thank all the members who have contributed to this debate right from when debate began last week on Thursday to this late hour in the day, including the nominated member Irene Mayaka, who was the last person to contribute with the dismissment. And Honorable Speaker, may I also confirm that we were not interrupting her, we were just trying to remind her that we do not know of a word like dismissment. It is dismissal, not dismissment. Honorable Speaker, maybe I will begin from that because she was the last contributor, and just like any other position created under the public service, there is a system or process of dismissal of public officers already established in law. So we need not repeat the same for this particular position, because the position, as those who have cared to read the committee's report and its addendum, will note that is a position now that is being created in the public service. And indeed, Honorable Speaker, I listened, Honorable Speaker, as I came from burying my good friend, an elder in my constituency this afternoon, and as I was driving back, I was listening to the leader of minority raise the issues that were of concern to him. Honorable Speaker, if you listen to everybody who has raised, including the Honorable Tiende Amolo, who had a dissenting report or minority report view on this committee's report, they have largely dwelt on the constitutionality of this particular position of CASs. Honorable Speaker, if you go to Article 132(4)(a) of the Constitution on the presidency, on the functions of the president, 132(4)(a) says that the president may, A, perform any other executive function provided for in this Constitution or in national legislation, like we are legislating, and except as otherwise provided for in this Constitution, except as otherwise provided for in this Constitution, may establish an office in the public service in accordance with the recommendations of the Public Service Commission. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, just the plain reading of that particular provision of our Constitution, that except as otherwise provided for within the Constitution, the President may establish an office in the public service in accordance with the recommendations of the Public Service Commission. And indeed, Honorable Speaker, I was saying, for those who cared to read through the committee's report, the Public Service Commission is in submission to the committee on the question of the establishment of the position of the Cabinet Chief Administrative Secretary. The committee report says that the PSC stated that it is in support of the proposed section 12A, 1, as it is in line with its recommendation to the President on the establishment of the office of CAS in accordance with Article 132(4)A of the Constitution, as I have read, Honorable Speaker. And indeed, they went on to even add certain provisions in terms of the years of experience that may be required for this particular position. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, it is very far from the truth, and I have seen a lot of our media practitioners pick on this particular narrative that this position is unconstitutional. That is very far from the truth. There is absolutely nothing unconstitutional in the President, in pursuant to Article 132(4)A of the Constitution, establishing an office within the public service that will help him to deliver to the people of Kenya. And if it is, Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the advice of the Public Service Commission, as the case is, under these particular circumstances, Honorable Speaker, then so be it. This office can be established legally and within the confines of our Constitution. Honorable Speaker, a lot also has been confused on the cases, and if you read the minority report by the Honorable Tiende Omolo, you see either the Matindi and 3 others case versus the National Assembly, or the Controller of Budget and others. All those cases that were quoted in the minority report, Honorable Speaker, are cases that were determined by the courts, and part of the issues the courts raised are what are being addressed by this bill and also the amendments proposed in the report by the committee. And that's why, Honorable Speaker, I say many of the people that I listened to this afternoon, I said I can bet 99.9%, except, of course, if you listen to the Honorable Mayaka and the Honorable Basil Ngui. Honorable Speaker, Basil Ngui is his name. Is the Honorable Basil Ngui, the member for Yata. You can tell those are 2 particular members who have read both the bill and the report. The others, including the leader of minority, Honorable Speaker, I must say, are informed by what they think is speaking to the gallery. And most, Honorable Speaker, I noticed a trend where people are afraid of particular appointees to this, those who have been appointed to this position of CAS. And I know there are those from one corner of this country who are afraid of former governor for Nairobi, Evans Kidero, who was nominated as a CAS. And they are afraid, of course, Honorable Speaker, because of the politics that is going on around the lakeside, Honorable Speaker. And I know there is a certain quarter that is afraid that Governor Evans Kidero, if he is to assume such a position, he might take over Baba's constituency down by the lakeside. And I know many of them are informed by that fear. And that is why you see the opposition to this bill is not based on law. It is not based on what the committee has said. It is based or informed by other political considerations. But I want to tell them, my dear brothers, the leader of minority, and those others like my good friend, Senior Counsel Tiende Omolo, I know they are all gunning to inherit Baba down by the lakeside. But they should not be afraid of Evans Kidero and the others who had been nominated, like my good friend, the former member for, what's his name? I've forgotten his name, who has been appointed now as an ambassador to Egypt. Honorable Speaker, the other issues, Honorable Speaker, that were being spoken to, I'm afraid many of them, if members had also bothered to read the committee's report and the addendum, have been addressed. The question of the who keeps the public seal, that again is very well addressed in this committee report, and the committee has proposed certain amendments, which when we get to the Committee of the Whole House, Honorable Speaker, will be prosecuted by the Honorable Murugara on behalf of the committee, and they have indeed agreed with many of the contributions I've had here, including that from the Honorable Basil, that the public seal should remain in the office of the Attorney General. That is more or less seen as a political, Honorable Speaker, and not a transitory office, as the case would be for that of the head of public service. Honorable Speaker, if you read the report also, there is a point that the Public Service Commission also raises on the need to have the office of the head of public service and the chief of staff to the president being two separate offices, Honorable Speaker, and including that of the secretary of the cabinet. And Honorable Speaker, for those who have served in the public service will tell you or know, those are two very busy offices, and there is need to separate the functions and have each office have its own distinct functions to assist the president in running of government and management of cabinet affairs, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, with those very many remarks, I beg to reply and thank all the members, especially those who read both the bill and were also informed by the committee's report and its addendum, for the many contributions that they made, many of which will enrich a debate or the amendments that are being proposed in third reading or in committee of the whole. And there are a few, Honorable Speaker, that may not have been captured by the committee, and sitting and listening to all members, we will incorporate them during committee of the whole. But for those who are running from political ghosts and political shadows, I am sorry, I have no cure for that kind of fear. And Honorable Speaker, I just want to ask them to indulge, even those from Luo Nyanza and by the lakeside who are prospective appointees as chief administrative secretaries, because they deserve, and they are Kenyans like all other Kenyans from other parts of the country. And therefore, nobody, either the Honorable Tiende Amolo, the Honorable Pio and I, should be afraid that those from their backyard who get this position may be advantaged in any way over and above those who are also seeking to inherit the position that the former Prime Minister has held over the years in ODM and Azimio and as leader of the opposition. With those many remarks, thank you, and I beg to reply.
Honorable members, the chair, substantive chair, Speaker of the House, had indicated that he's going to make a determination on the constitutionality of certain provisions of the bill tomorrow. Consequently, the question cannot be put now. So we're going to the next order, but the chair directs that we go to order number 12 because it is time-bound, and order number 11 will be after order number 12 is exhausted. Next order. Order number 12.
Order number 12, the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2024, second reading.
Order number 12 is the one which we are going to dispose of now because it is time-bound.
Thank you very much.
Honorable members, the one on the revenue, Division of Revenue Bill is time-bound, and the chairperson of the Budget and Appropriation Committee can proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I'll take very few minutes to move this. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2024 be read a second time. Honorable Speaker and members, I want to thank the members of the Budget Committee for sitting for long hours in coming up with this bill, Honorable Speaker. But before I dwell on that, Honorable Speaker, as part of what we do as the Budget Committee, we also check on the kind of projects we appropriate money, and I want to bring greetings from Tom Mboya University, where I was honored to give a public lecture this afternoon. Also, as I supervise the kind of work that is ongoing through the monies appropriated in this parliament. Honorable Speaker, the Budget and Appropriations Committee in the report, and even through the budget policy statement that we passed the other day, Honorable Speaker suggested and the House adopted that we have Kenya shillings 391 billion that will be the shareable revenue for the coming financial year, that is 2024-2025. Honorable Speaker, This is based, of course, on several parameters. The major one being, Honorable Speaker, that we needed to reach a threshold of 15% of the last audited financials, Honorable Speaker, and especially on the revenue side. Honorable Speaker, as these members are aware, the last audited financial report, Honorable Speaker, is for 2020-2021, and we are dealing with a revenue of around 1.57 trillion Kenya shillings. And Honorable Speaker, if we do a formula, therefore in terms of percentage, then Honorable Speaker, we are appropriating Kenya shillings actually a percentage of 25.9, Honorable Speaker, percent of the last audited revenues, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, this goes to show that this House and the executive, the government led by His Excellency, the President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, that we support devolution, and that is why we keep on adding the shareable revenue that goes into discharging efficient service to our counties, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, also we got a chance to meet our governors, especially in the process of BPS, and there are several concerns which are legitimate, part of which, Honorable Speaker, is that there are many functions that they are currently now undertaking with the national government. Honorable Speaker, even as we give conditional grants, they also need to raise money, Honorable Speaker, to be able to match up, Honorable Speaker, with those conditional grants. And especially, Honorable Speaker, the county aggregations and industrial centers where they need to expend money. Also on the health sector, Honorable Speaker, there is a budget for our counties, Honorable Speaker, that also our county governments will need support, and especially when it comes to the hiring of the people who will be assisting in the primary health in our villages, Honorable Speaker, part of which is paid by the national government, alongside others, Honorable Speaker, being paid by the national government, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, in that regard, our county governments, Honorable Speaker, are being squeezed over time in regards to the amount of money available for them to dispense, and especially in terms of development budget. And Honorable Speaker, I beseech this House that going forward, we may need to support our counties by additional resources. Honorable Speaker, we were able to add, as the Budget Committee, Kenya shillings 4 billion that will go into a conditional grant, Honorable Speaker, and especially to buy equipment to our health facilities, those at level 1, 2, and 3, and Honorable Speaker, in terms of improving their stature in regards to infrastructure. Honorable Speaker, this we did with cognizant in mind that, Honorable Speaker, as this House is aware, the bill that, or the proposal that had come from the National Treasury had suggested that our counties get some monies for fuel levy, that is from RMLF, which, Honorable Speaker, this House declined, and therefore, Honorable Speaker, in anticipation of that, and in support of devolution, we also added Kenya shillings 4 billion that will go into the health sector, and especially in improving infrastructure and equipment in our primary health facilities. Honorable Speaker, I want to thank you very much and thank all the members of this House, including the Parliamentary Budget Office, for being very forthright in supporting this process. And Honorable Speaker, in that regard, I request the Vice Chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, the Honorable Mary Amase, to second.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, Chair, Budget and Appropriations Committee. Who is seconding?
I am.
Mary Amase,
thank
proceed.
you. Thank you, Chair, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this bill simply provides for the vertical sharing of revenue between the two levels of government. And I just want to speak to two paragraphs or to two issues. One of them is on the equalization fund. Under Article 204, it provides for allocation of 1%, 0.5% to the equalization fund, which is supposed to be distributed across all marginalized areas. And Honorable Speaker, this formula needs to be reviewed, because I'm aware that the third policy for identification of marginalized areas provided for visiting of counties to identify areas that should benefit from this equalization fund. And I believe that the commissioners of CRA did actually visit counties. But you realize that when you look at the distribution of the funds to the marginalized areas, some areas are getting quite a lot of money while others do not. Yet we agree that in every county, there's a pocket of marginalization. When you look at Busia, for example, only 2 areas are benefiting, Budalangi and Teso North. Yet if you come to Teso South, my constituency, or to Funyula or to Nambale, all those sub-counties, there are pockets of marginalization. And that actually is reflected in all other counties. Honorable Speaker, I also want to speak to paragraph 17V. That one of the main mandate of CRA is to provide recommendation concerning the basis for sharing of the equitable sharing. But you see over the years, there's no time when the Division of Revenue Bill has actually concurred with the recommendations of CRA. Yet this is a constitutional institution mandated with that responsibility. So we also felt as a committee that there is need for National Treasury to agree with the CRA before they submit the Division of Revenue to us. Because I believe that by the time CRA is recommending the figures that they recommend for sharing, that a lot of research has gone into it, that they have considered the costing of functions and all other factors. So they should get into concurrence so that we avoid going into mediation, as has been the tradition since the establishment of this institution. Otherwise, Honorable Speaker, I second and I support. Thank you.
Honorable members, I propose the question that the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2024, be read a second time. The Honorable Dr. Wilberforce Oundo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to comment on the Division of Revenue Bill, or eventually which will become an act we call DORA. On the outset, let me comment and state I support the bill, and I support the vertical sharing of revenue between the 2 levels of government on account that we have surpassed the threshold set in the Constitution of Kenya, and on understanding that the purpose of devolution was to take development to the grassroots, and the purpose of devolution was to empower the grassroots, and that purpose of devolution was to ensure there's equitable share of development in this country. Honorable Speaker, we need to be extremely careful how we deal with devolution. We started from district focus for rural development. We have come through various forms. CDF is a form of devolved function, equalization fund, and the rest. But the question we keep on begging to ask, and which no policy researchers and which no bold person has had the courage to tell us what has been the impact of the billions and billions we have pumped into devolved units since inception of devolution after the election of 2013. Honorable Speaker, in this particular financial year, 2024-2025, it stands at 24.9%, being the percentage of the revenue that was approved by Parliament after this Parliament adopted the report of the Public Accounts Committee of 2020-2021 financial year. I have gone through policy decisions or policy prescription that has been provided by the Budget and Appropriation Committee, and some of them is a sad reading. And some of them, Honorable Speaker, is an admission of factors we have been talking about, the flow of the House, in public arena, and some matter everybody has been talking about, and which the government of the day has strenuously.
Order, Honorable Undo. Could the chair, budget and appropriations, and the deputy leader of majority approach the speaker? Proceed.
So, Honorable Speaker, we have said the economy is in trouble. We have said the economy is not doing well. But we have been continuously told that that is Azimio propaganda. We have been told that the economy is not in a recession, the economy is in a rebound. When you go to policy prescription number 9, on page 397, Honorable Speaker, it says so. Increase expenditure for national government purpose of debt servicing, coupled the weakening shilling against the dollar. The Budget and Appropriation Committee, in its considered wisdom, and having benefited from consultation from Treasury, other stakeholders, and Parliamentary Budget Office, have acknowledged that our shilling is going to remain weak for the intervening period during the budget, the implementation of this budget. And they clearly put it in black and white, weakening shilling against the dollar. And as typical escapist mentality, they blame Ukraine, they blame the Federal Reserve, they look for all possible excuses to blame. Secondly, they are saying financing constraints due to limited access to finance in the domestic and international financial market. Are they admitting that our sovereign risk, our sovereign, our sovereignty, our sovereign risk is negative to an extent that we are now unable to attract revenue from international financiers? Honorable Speaker, we must address what happens to 4.6 billion of Armson grant. Where is it factored? Or do they intend to factor it in conditional grants? Honorable Speaker, we need to go back to basically to the issue about the county governments. Honorable Speaker, county governments were never supposed to be a cost center. County governments were supposed to be profit center, were supposed to be revenue generating centers. And Honorable Speaker, as much as they want to argue with the National Treasury seeking for enhanced allocation, the overriding and overarching question we need to ask, we as Kenyans, what are the county governments doing themselves to collect their own revenue, to boost revenue to the counties? If you read today's newspapers, Honorable Speaker, and I want Kenyans to be very clear, if you read today's newspapers, almost 60% of the counties spent on foreign and local travel exceeding their local revenue collection. So essentially, the purpose, the spirit of devolution is being devoured, is being obliterated by members of the counties, both the assembly and the executive, for their personal benefit, not for the benefit of the people. Honorable Speaker, every year we pump billions and billions. This year, 391 billion is being pumped into county governments. To what extent has these billions, since the devolution began, changed the welfare, per capita income of the local mwananchi? To what extent has it improved the health index of the people of the counties? Is it not time now, for example, Commission of Revenue Authority, KIPRA, and other think tanks to start now costing services in the counties so that we devolve and submit funds based on costed services? To what extent, Honorable Speaker, do we need to ask ourselves that out of 100% funds taken to the counties, what's the percentage that goes to development? You would find, Honorable Speaker, and Kenyans need to know that out of 100%, you'll be lucky if you sampled a few of the counties to find even more than 20% of that funds going to development vote. Many of them, Honorable Speaker, goes to personal emolument, recurrent expenditure, and of course, money to play around with. We must protect devolution. And for us to protect devolution is not to sweep the ills that develop devolution under the carpet in the disguise of being politically correct. The ACC, Office of Control of Budget, continuously highlight these issues. But since we are completely toothless, we have been unable to address these challenges. Finally, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of road maintenance fuel levy. Honorable Speaker, the categorization or the classification of roads in this country is very clear. The county governments receive their own money. What do they do with that money? You go to most rural areas, you'd only find roads done by KERA that are motorable. You go to many rural areas, there are very few kilometers of tarmac road undertaken by county government. We support county governments, we support devolution, but time has come that as a country, as we embark on the second phase, so to speak, of devolution, to start asking hard and important questions. We can no longer bury our head in the sand and hoping that we will continue the way it is. On that score, I support, and I wait to see what the Senate will speak, what the senators will say. Those who go around making noise, I want to see who will defend devolution and who will continue to suppress devolution. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
The Honorable Gitonga Muruga.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Speaker, I rise to support the DORA, which is the Division of Revenue bill, which will translate into an act of parliament as soon as it is assented to, for the simple reason that we have received a comprehensive report from the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and for that I'm thankful to the chairperson of the committee, the Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, because it takes the task to prepare a report that in essence means we are able to divide the revenue between the two sets of government. This revenue is actually the gross revenue of the country, and the first appropriation that is made is what goes to the counties and what remains with the national government. As I support this bill, it is to implore the national government to ensure that once it gets its allocation of the money, this money is actually utilized well, especially when it comes to development in the country. It has to be equitable development of all corners of the country. The national government should actually prioritize also constituencies, rural constituencies like Tharaka, which have lagged behind in matters development for a long period of time, simply because they are arid, semi-arid, and marginalized. We also require services from the national government, including water, electricity, and good roads. Then when we go to the county government, which is also very important, the county government must use these resources for the benefit of the citizens of the various counties. We know for sure that many counties today are a haven of corruption, where money is used in the worst of the worst methods that can be applied. We have seen complaints all over that, leave alone recurrent expenses which are overflowing. We do have revenues that are getting lost, revenues that are being misused, as a result of which the citizens are not getting the services they deserve. Counties must also wake up so that when they come to the provision of health care, this is given priority it deserves. Health care in basic villages is in dispensaries and health centers, which are under counties. Then they have also to do their portions of the roads. We know they were actually craving for our carer money, but unfortunately, that was protected by the Committee on Budget and Appropriations. And in spite of that, they have now an extra 4 billion, which they can use for roads. We know roads in the rural areas are pathetic, and the county government must use these funds prudently. These resources are resources from taxpayers. It's taxpayers who have mostly contributed to the money we are dividing. We know on top of this, there are grants. There may also be some borrowed money to bridge up, patch up the gaps. But all this calls for prudence when it comes to use of public resources. So today, we will approve this bill so that the revenue is divided. But we must also call upon the two levels of government to exercise optimum responsibility to ensure that the monies are properly used. With those remarks, I beg to support.
The Honorable Andrew Okuome Adepo, the MP for Karachuonyo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. Let me start by saying that I do support this bill. But one thing remains a question in my mind. Revenue is divided between the national government and the county governments. But then, do we really, or are we very comfortable that the money we send to these two levels of government do give us the result? Does that money do exactly what we want? Mr. Speaker, I have my reservations. Let me start with the national government. First, the money reaches this destination a little too late, sometimes even to the extent of never coming at all within the financial year. I have in mind the money that goes to, say, NGCDF. Like we all know in this house, we are just about 3 or 2 months away from the end of the financial year. Yet, we have not even got 50% of that money. When are we going to get it? And will it give us the purpose for what it was meant within the time required? Because in the next financial year, we should be talking of a different funds allotment. Mr. Speaker, again, one wonders if things are going the right way and we are using the money allocated to us, then the issues of pending bills, for example, should not find their ugly head living with us in our financial operations. We need to know why all these things are happening. Let me now turn to the county governments. We know that the devolution was for a purpose. It was meant to give development to various areas within the country. But then this money goes to the counties very late. It goes so late that sometimes part of it may not even reach the destination. Because of this, you find some sectors of our needs suffer. I have, for example, in mind the health sector. We know, for example, doctors are on strike. And this strike has resulted from the fact that the ministry cannot afford paying the interns what they should be paid when they are given their stations. Why should this happen? Why is the money not reaching the ministry so that the ministry can do their work. I know both counties and also national government projects are not funded well. You find a project has an allocation, but no performance. In my own constituency, we have a road that has been repeating itself in allocation. And Mr. Speaker, I would have wanted the attention of the chairman of the budget committee on this. I have drawn his attention to it. Maybe he can tell me I have not done the follow-up. But the truth is that I have a project, allocated funds very well. Now I think it is second or third year, I don't know. This project has never been done. I've made as much noise as I can, really, on this. And even His Excellency the President has given several promises to my constituents, telling them that that road is going to be done. And indeed, in terms of budgeting, we have the money allocated. But when it comes to action, you don't know where the money goes, you don't see any project. What I'm saying is that budgeting is for a purpose. You budget to enable you do what you want to do. But if you provide for doing it, but you don't do it, something is definitely wrong. Mr. Speaker, I really long for the day we will be budgeting, acting on the budget to the letter, so that we can be able to give the Kenyans the benefits they need from this house. Because giving out money or budgeting for money and sourcing for money is the responsibility of this house. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It is always great to listen to you, Honorable Andrew Kwame, on matters finance. Thank you very much. The Honorable Beatrice Elachi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support the Division of Revenue Bill, knowing very well that we've just concluded the budget policy statement, Mr. Speaker. And the memorandum is very clear. It is clear based on Article 218 of the Constitution, where now we divide vertically the resources both at the national level and at the county level. Mr. Speaker, you realize this year, Chairman took us through a policy statement that was itemized so well, and we agreed that we will come and look at now how the division of revenue and at long last the appropriation itself. But for me, what I want us to now ask ourselves as a country, as we continue doing divisions of revenue, and I know this bill will go to the Senate and we will find ourselves again in the crisis where we normally find ourselves, Mr. Speaker, in terms of resources based on what CRA gives us and what we propose, even as a House. But it is important now, and especially for us who are supposed to ensure that there's efficiency in the monies that we give. And Mr. Speaker, when you remember the policy statement, we say it very well, that when you look at now what the Auditor General is doing, she is going around and ensuring that the monies we are given, are we spending them prudently? And you realize right now we are having a lot of crises in terms of even education. Now the capitation has gone down. And so we are saying, even as we do the division of revenue, how I wish now counties can come out and give us now 15, let's say 10 years. Each county must give us at least a blueprint that shows that indeed, based on the Vision 2030 that we were given, we aligned ourselves as a country to that. What have you done with the resources that you have been given? So I will plead and ask even Senate that even as you push for more resources, it's ability where you come to committees and do this accountability. It is time now we see growth in our counties. It is time, because even the revenues we are here, national government does not implement in national. You have to go to a county to implement the money you have been given. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, if we do not push this, we are going to have a country that has a lot of wealth, but at the same time, we keep on seeing our poverty levels still. Young people are struggling, women are struggling, we call them hustlers, are struggling. So the most important thing in the division of revenue of 2024, we have to question ourselves and look in a mirror and ask ourselves as a country, even as we put in measures to ensure we are paying debt, to ensure we are doing all this. As in the constituency, Mr. Speaker, we also need to ask ourselves, we've been given revenue. So far, what have we done? Are we able to account for it, even as we come now to divide ourselves again in the same resources? The same past, the past that has now stretched itself so hard that Kenyans are even wondering. The other thing, we have to be very clear. Yes, we are giving divisions of revenue. We shall appropriate this money. And we want to see even the new funds that are coming up, Mr. Speaker, because I am a bit worried with the fund, everything is a fund. You see, we are a capitalist country. We have to be very wary of that. That if you continue with funds, you find yourself slipping slowly into a socialist, and we will find ourselves in a very confused situation, because in everything we put, we are creating a fund. But yes, we have good intentions as Parliament as we create these funds, but where it is being implemented, Mr. Speaker, is where now the questions will start coming back to this House and biting us, because we shall be asking, where is this? We don't have. And we will be saying, oh, the law says now we go CJUI to ESC. Those things have to stop. We just have to ask ourselves and say, we want to see change. Kenyans would wish to see change. How do we bring in this change? And it is important, Mr. Speaker, even as I look at what the county's equitable share is. So the county will be allocated 391.1 billion for the financial year 2024-2025. That's as an equitable share of revenue raised nationally. Is there a day after 10 years of devolution we shall ever get results of the local revenue that remains in the county? So that even when you are sharing that revenue, you know, at the end of the year, County X, let me give an example of Nairobi. Nairobi County was able to collect, Kidero collected a record one time, 13 billion. Sonko came in, he tried. We have to try, we have to see. This county can even bring, Mr. Speaker, more than 30 billion, collected to 80 billion, if the streams are put into proper use and you are able. You find that at one point we had more than 2,000 streams. Some of them, people have passwords, Mr. Speaker, they are in their accounts, and they are the ones who are running these accounts. So you as a governor, you have no even idea what is happening with your revenue in treasury and the streams that are there. So even as we agree, and I want to plead with my governor that now, for the first time, call us as Nairobi County and sit down with us when now we have now finished doing the division of revenue, and tell us each constituency, now that my governor has started creating barrows, how much is coming to this barrow, and what will be the activities of this barrow. Because the more we enhance ourselves together, and I always appreciate seeing how Murang'a County, Homa Bay County, you with your governors, you are working so closely, you are able to do your budget so closely, and be able to know what is coming in each of your constituencies. That is my prayer to my governor today, that we are praying and wishing in the year 2024, he will hold us as a county like any other county, as one team, not because we like each other, but for the sake of Nairobians, so that we can see change coming. As I finalize, Mr. Speaker, I know this House appropriated money in a supplementary budget for classrooms for Nairobi. And how I wish now that the NCGDF committee, Treasury, can finalize those guidelines. And because Chair had put it very clear, and the certificates were even done here, I have been wondering why that money has not yet come. So for me, I want to thank the Committee of Budget, but to really plead that if we are told by government, indeed, we are supposed to ensure we pay debts, we are supposed to ensure